This is Right to Life Radio. And now, here's your host, John DeRoe.
Here we are with Right to Life Radio, and it's time for Jonathan Keller to work out his personal grievances against reporters for the Sacramento Times who are fast growing on his nerves. And we're going to talk about this as it relates to different kinds of abortion issues. Jonathan, who is your new least favorite writer at the Sacramento Times? And let's talk about a cultural thing that, now, before we get into this, I know there are a lot of people who listen to this show. I know there are a lot of people who listen to Power Talk who are dog family people. Jonathan, you are not a dog person.
Well, I wouldn't say I'm not an anti-dog person.
Now, I would say I am far closer to that than you are. So disliking domesticated animals is a bedrock of my and my wife's marriage. So maybe
I didn't realize that. Okay.
Yeah. So Holly can't stand dogs and cats. I kind of ride alongside her. But stand with us. We don't mind you having a dog. But I think we would be united, and hopefully if you're someone who's listening to Right to Life Radio, you'd be united in agreeing that human beings are more important than dogs.
That would be putting it mildly.
I think that is a thing that we can all kind of agree on. And
absolutely.
Yeah. Now, so we are going to talk about, and I think one of the very absurd things is hearing writers who are otherwise pro-choice and politicians and public policy people who are pro-choice, who are nonetheless extremely concerned about the idea of euthanizing animals.
Yes.
We are very concerned about euthanizing animals, and it's at the same time, it's some of the same people who maybe voted for legalizing physician-assisted suicide of human beings. So, Jonathan, let's take it away.
Yes.
A piece in the Sacramento Bee, not the newspaper of the unnamed newspaper from Fresno, but the Sacramento Bee. So
Yes.
let's go through it, Jonathan. So, Jonathan, I'll let you take the lead on this since this was your piece that you brought.
So I'll tell you, this is an article from our new friend, Andrew Sheeler.
Yes.
And
Jonathan and I develop in the course of this show certain journalists, opinion writers, etc., who are kind of our favorites. And by favorites, we mean often least favorites.
Yes.
What's his face from Vox that we always...
Ian Millhiser.
Ian Millhiser is one of our
along
favorites.
with his buddy, I always forget.
Mark Joseph
Stern.
Yeah.
Who are both hard-left progressive Supreme Court reporters.
Hard-left progressive legal commentators. They're among our favorites. Ian Millhiser's our favorite because he was constantly believed that the sky was falling and that the Supreme Court was going to do the worst thing possible with abortion. And, in fact, finally, he turned out to be right after the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade. Andrew Sheeler is now entering our list of least favorite journalists for his various very lefty views when it comes to abortion policy, things like that. So, Jonathan, take it away. Andrew Sheeler is very concerned. The headline of this piece from the Sacramento Bee is, Gavin Newsom spent $50 million to end animal euthanasia. So why are more pets being killed?
That's basically it, yes. And we wrote an article about this California Family Council that was titled California's No-Kill Hypocrisy.
All right, let's hear it.
So the gist of it is, John, that California Governor Gavin Newsom had just allocated recently, over the last couple of years, $50 million to end animal euthanasia in the state's shelters.
End?
Yes, end animal euthanasia.
So like zero.
That would be, I think, the goal. If you look at this article, if you look at the article here from Andrew Sheeler, he says, a room in the back of the San Luis Obispo County Animal Shelter is the last stop for some of the dogs and cats that come to stay at the facility.
And by the way, important to note, there's never been a mainstream media article, profiling an abortion clinic like this.
Yes.
They would never in a billion years dare to use such dramatic language about, and this
but that's
is
the opening line.
Yeah. This is the kind of bias when we talk about bias in the media, to present and frame articles in this very dramatic way where you obviously see where they're heading. They think that animal euthanasia is terrible. And he would never, no one in a billion years would do that for an abortion clinic when, frankly, it's probably deserving of that kind of treatment. So anyway.
And this is, so far from the barks and meows and day-to-day bustle of the brand new, brightly lit $20 million building, this room has muted lighting and a quiet, almost reflective atmosphere. There are a few holding cages where animals can receive sedation. On this counter, a bag of treats. Quote, we've got space where staff can sit for a little time and maybe socialize with the animal, give it some treats, a little comfort, and some quiet, friendly time, said Dr. Eric Anderson, the SLO County Animal Services Manager. Most animals that pass through these doors are too sick to be adopted, or they have serious behavioral issues preventing them from being good pets. Some are just unlucky. They're perfectly adoptable, but their time is up, and there isn't enough room for them, either at a shelter or local animal rescue shelters. So basically, it goes on in this long article to talk about the fact that California, being the largest state,
more dogs than we can handle. Yeah.
Being the largest state in the nation, we have a huge unhoused animal population.
Mm-hmm. Definitely the unhoused population that we really need to be worried about here.
That's right.
Not to bring in the homeless issue, but yeah. Anyway.
Across the state, shelters with too many animals and not enough space are resorting to euthanasia. Oh, heaven forbid.
Well, this is also kind of... all right, look, I don't want to pick a fight with animal
lovers.
There's a lot of animal lovers out there.
Sure.
And I'm sure, look, I can say this. People listening to this show probably can have differing opinions when it comes to how much money and how much effort and energy the state should invest into the idea of animal shelters and killing more animals. I'll concede that this is probably not a healthy state of affairs to have this many dogs around. We have to euthanize this many dogs and cats.
Yes.
I guess I am a little quizzical at the idea of allocating $50 million to it, but this is a state with a budget of, what's our state budget every year, Jonathan? It's like $40 billion bucks.
Yeah, it's
something
crazy
like that.
high.
Yeah, it's a ton of money. So now, I mean, an accounting error with that $50 million could fund our Obria clinic for a year, but help out. Meanwhile, we're spending $50 million on ending animal euthanasia. Meanwhile, almost 25% of women in South Fresno can't get any prenatal care. We have, blah, blah. All right. Anyway, I will hold my tongue. I don't think it's a completely illegitimate use of state funding.
Sure.
to, having this many thousands and thousands of dogs being euthanized is probably not a good thing and probably not great in general. And taking steps to address it is probably a worthwhile thing. Anyway, continue, John.
So this is a little bit more from the article here from Andrew Sheeler. Across the state, shelters with too many animals and not enough space are resorting to euthanasia. In 2021, the most recent year for which data is available, shelters house 361,000 animals.
Okay.
Now, that is a lot of animals. I will
That
grant
is a
you.
lot.
And then it goes on. These are the animals California Governor Gavin Newsom vowed to save at a 2020 press conference where he presented that year's proposed budget, pledging $50 million towards the effort. And by the way, I just want to point out, Andrew Sheeler links back to an article that he wrote January 19th of 2020, where the title of that article was Gavin Newsom calls for ending animal euthanasia. Again, John, like you said, not reducing, ending animal euthanasia. We want to be a no-kill state.
While expanding adult human physician-assisted suicide.
And child
abortion
human
and child
abortion.
Yeah, child euthanasia, if you will, on a massive scale.
And he goes on and he says, 3 years and tens of millions of taxpayer dollars later, California animal shelters are euthanizing more healthy adoptable dogs and cats than ever. So then he basically goes through and he talks about the fact that originally, that article that I mentioned was written a scant 2 months before the COVID-19 pandemic breakout in 2020 that kind of wrecked everybody's priorities budget-wise for that year. But
almost certainly.
But he points out later in the article, when the pandemic arrived, the $50 million originally pledged became only $5 million as the governor and legislature scrambled to cut expenses. But the next year, in 2021, Newsom restored the remaining $45 million.
Yeah.
And that was basically then when the situation, the California for All Animals thing was up and running. So the thing that's just amazing to me, John, is setting aside the exact amount of funding.
Yeah.
To me, it is the fact that you have this incredibly long article where there's this hand-wringing and there's this, moral discussion about...
And it's a thing of, okay, are any of these people saying? I don't know that anyone is saying a given, animal euthanasia is always and everywhere evil. I don't think anyone's saying that. It seems as though Governor Newsom is making at least this claim that, look, this is not a great end result for we have too many dogs and that we have to euthanize some of them because there are just too many of them. So we're going to work towards not having dog euthanasia. We want to work towards having zero dog euthanasia.
Sure.
Okay, fine.
I'm sorry. I shouldn't laugh, but it's just...
Well, and I guess it's just the thing of the idea that we don't approach abortion in the same way.
Correct.
Liberals used to... I mean, this was like how a bunch of... this was a real thing. Being in college in 2008 for the rise of Obama and watching these otherwise pro-life, growing up in a Republican household, college kids sort of talk themselves in circles about why they should vote for Obama because they were excited about Barack Obama and he was more exciting and interesting than John McCain was. And they were like, well, his policies are going to actually result in fewer abortions.
That's right.
That's actually what's going to happen.
He's the real pro-life candidate.
He's the real pro-life candidate. And now it would be one thing if only college kids were convincing themselves of that. There were also like adult, well-educated college professors.
Good old Doug
Kamek, who he got out of it. He didn't even get to be Obama's ambassador to the Vatican. He only got to be Obama's ambassador to Malta, which, like, if we're talking about Catholic country ambassadorships, Malta is definitely not the one you'd prefer to get. You'd prefer to get the Vatican ambassadorship. So anyway, for Malta, Doug, soldier soul.
I got that reference.
Yeah, there you go. Man for all seasons. There we go. But that's the thing is we're not even anymore talking about the idea of lessening the number of abortions in California. We're expanding. All we talk about now is abortion access. We don't view any individual. We're not in safe, legal, rareville anymore. So for those of you listening, probably a lot of you remember in the 90s when the Clinton administration would talk about abortion and they would refer to abortion. We want abortion to be safe, legal, and rare. And for those of you who listen carefully, you will notice nobody on the pro-abortion side says that anymore.
Right.
Absolutely nobody says that anymore.
Rare implies that it's not good, that it's not something that we should be promoting or supporting.
They don't want it to be rare. They don't care that it isn't rare. They want it instead to be accessible. That's what they want. They want everyone to be able to, they want every 15-year-old in this state who gets pregnant to be able to pull out their cell phone, chat with a nurse, Planned Parenthood nurse practitioner, do a telemedicine visit for the abortion pill and get the abortion pill mailed to their house. That's what they want. They don't actually want abortion to be rare. So here we are in this state with an approach of let's get to a place where no dog is euthanized, where no dog is unwanted, where we promote doggy adoption. We're going to have a mate. So presumably this $50 million is going to include a mega campaign to encourage people to donate shelter dogs.
Sure.
And meanwhile, adoption in California is cratering. And I'm going to talk about that next because it's jived with a lot of our experiences at Right to Life. That is next on Right to Life Radio. We're going to be talking about the adoption issue. We're here with Jonathan Keller from California Family Council. That is next here on Power Talk. We are back with Right to Life Radio. We are talking about California and its bizarre concern with ending all pet euthanasia, all dog euthanasia. Governor Gavin Newsom says, California, we want to be a no-kill state.
No kill.
No kill. But we don't necessarily mind if we're killing human beings.
Well, I mean, it depends on who you're killing.
Well, whom? Exactly. It's whom.
Let's not go too crazy here.
Exactly. So, Jonathan, California is spending $50 million on basically a series of programs in order to get us to a point where we are a zero-kill state for dogs, where we're not euthanizing any more dogs. But here we are also massively expanding abortion access, abortion funding, abortion accessibility, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
So, John, you mentioned before just the way this article was opened about, talking about how tragic it is, this, sterile clinic that's killing these dogs. Imagine trying to write about an abortion clinic this way. Well, I want you to try to imagine any mainstream writer writing about abortion the way this following little section goes.
Okay. Yeah, go for it.
Okay. So this
our producer Colton. By the way, if you're wondering what the disturbance is, let's kind of go behind the curtain.
Oh no!
During the break, our producer Colton said, they're gonna have doggy food stamps coming up next. And we were laughing at oh my gosh,
yes.
of course, you're so, I'm sure you're right.
5 years
Colton.
from now, that will be a tragic thing.
Meanwhile, Colton just Googled it, and that is in fact a program that there is an online petition. There is an online petition aimed to get pet food covered on food stamps. So here we are in California. We got 25% of women in South Fresno can't get prenatal care for their babies. We have God knows how many abortions we have in this state. I mean, we could have as many as 100,000 abortions a year in California. Meanwhile, we're wringing our hands over pet adoption. We're probably, anyway. So just so you know what was disturbing us, it was Colton being absurdly right. So
I know.
Okay, go for it, Jonathan.
All right. Let me go back and find that article again. So the gist of it is, again, John, let's imagine that you can find any mainstream media reporter that would be willing to write an article that quite sounds like this. If I can,
if you can pull it up,
I can pull it back up. Of course,
it's all right.
As soon as I sent it, my phone or my thing.
Colton, leave
crashed
all
here.
of this in because we're highlighting how Jonathan is not prepared.
I've got
and
too many
probably has 8,000 tabs up.
Okay,
on his laptop.
okay.
All right, here we go.
All right. So this one, again, from the article here with.
This is Andrew Sheeler writing in the Sacramento.
Subhead is on this one is the lawmakers fail to address euthanasia problems. California lawmakers on both the left and the right have tried unsuccessfully to address the problems. This year, Assemblyman Alec Lee, Democrat from San Jose, introduced Assembly Bill 332 that would have required the California Department of Public Health again to share statewide euthanasia data. Despite support from dozens of organizations, it was not. It was killed in the suspense file. But then this is the one, John, called Bowie's Law. Now, as I read this, just imagine if you replace the word puppy with baby.
Okay.
Then there was Bowie's Law. Assembly Bill 595 was named for a healthy 15-week-old puppy, euthanized by a Los Angeles County shelter despite a rescue group being willing to take him. The bill would have required animal shelters to provide 72 hours online notice that an animal is set to being killed.
Wow. So imagine you had an abortion policy, you have to give public notice 72 hours before. Hey, this woman, can we have a
So let me reread this here. Imagine that we're in a red state, and we're outraged about this in a red state. Assembly Bill 595 was named for a healthy 15-week-old baby.
Let's even say we can even say fetus. Let's go.
A healthy 15-week-old fetus who was aborted by a Dallas County shelter or a Dallas Texas,
County Planned Parenthood clinic.
Yeah, Dallas County Planned Parenthood, despite a local pregnancy center being willing to adopt him. The bill would have required that abortion clinics provide 72 hours online notice that a child is set to be killed.
Why would that be any different? Why would that be any different? And this is the thing. So this is a problem that, speaking of adoption, to segue slightly here.
There's your transition.
Segue slightly here for the rest of the segment. Okay. One of the big things we have noticed locally, and I think this is a trend, I don't know that it's just a Fresno-specific thing. I think this is a trend in a lot of places, is while the abortion rate is going down, and that is a good thing, the number of children, at least in the Fresno area, the number of women who get pregnant in difficult situations, who are willing to place their child for adoption, is becoming smaller and smaller and smaller. To such an extent that, for example, Infant of Prague Adoption Agency here in Fresno, which was a Catholic-founded adoption agency, actually a lot of right-to-life people were instrumental in founding Infant of Prague and setting it up and being on its board. Infant of Prague went out of business purely because they didn't have any babies. They didn't have any available babies for people to adopt. There are plenty of people who want to adopt. There aren't enough babies for them. And I am sure that if the governor is spending $50 million on getting us to a point of zero animal euthanasia in this state,
they don't even say they want animal euthanasia to be safe, legal, and rare. They literally want to eliminate it.
They don't want a single animal to be euthanized in this state. They don't want it to be safe. Yeah. So presumably the governor is going to be promoting to the absolute hilt like how wonderful animal adoption is. Oh, you're rescuing these animals. And by the way, can you correct me if when people say they rescued this dog, does that mean they just got a free dog?
Yes.
Who was going to be killed? Okay.
A rescue means that this is an animal that you didn't go to a breeder. You didn't,
so you got a free dog.
You didn't buy it from a puppy mill, quote unquote. You went to the shelter, and before the animal could be euthanized, you rescued it from an untimely death.
This is my not a dog owner bias showing through. Anyway. All right. Anyway, before the dog owning community jumps all over me. Nonetheless, it's okay. Your dog already tried to jump all over me, so you don't need to. So regardless, the state of California is on the one hand going to be going, adopt. Here, it's so important to do dog adoption. We're trying to, don't let any dog be killed. Oh, every dog, a wanted dog. Adopt. Adoption is such a wonderful thing. Meanwhile, adoption in California is so difficult, so complicated, so cumbersome, so expensive, such a sea of red tape. And what does the state do to encourage either people in difficult situations who are pregnant? Hey, maybe consider placing your child in an adoptive situation, a supportive situation where it's open, where you can still maintain contact with your child. If you're not in a situation where you're able to take care of someone, blah, 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 blah. I mean, we see people through our outreach center who are clearly not in a place where they'd be able very well to take care of a child, where it seems like a situation where adoption would make a ton of sense, and these people would rather abort than place their child in an adoptive situation. Wouldn't it make sense for a state to encourage adoption like that? If you actually took the 1990s Democrat approach, of we want abortion to be safe, legal, and rare, wouldn't you take that step? We're going to take that stance in California for dogs, and we're not maybe even going to take it for humans. And that is just an absolute tragedy, I think. All right. We will be back with more on Right to Life Radio. We're back on Right to Life Radio. Okay, Jonathan, we're going to shift gears here from talking about state stuff. We've been talking about California wants to be a zero-kill, no animal euthanasia in California, and apparently we don't care, though, about how many abortions we do. So let's go from state issues to federal issues, and with some local flair. So for those who've been watching, the House of Representatives has been in quite a tizzy for the last couple of weeks.
Putting it mildly.
To put it mildly. Our local Congress, my congressman in Clovis, Kevin McCarthy, was booted out of his role as Speaker of the House of Representatives. And as of this recording, full disclosure, we're recording this on Wednesday. It's going to air on Saturday. As of this recording, the House of Representatives still does not have a speaker. And so we feel fairly confident that by the time the show airs, they still won't have a speaker. And I want to talk through, though, what it could mean for pro-life policy, the outcome of the speaker debate, and different kinds of people being in power as Speaker of the House, and ways in which the House of Representatives has a role in impacting abortion policy. So, Jonathan, I want to talk first about Kevin McCarthy a little bit. McCarthy's record as Speaker when it comes to abortion issues was fine for, he had a very short record because he was only Speaker for
a very brief period.
He was only Speaker for like 9 months. So kind of not a ton to say. I think the one thing I will say about him, though, I'm a little... look, we're not going to get into the business of endorsing or opposing politicians here. I don't think there's much of a 501c3 issue with saying whom we would favor for the perspective of pro-life policy when it comes to who is the speaker.
Yeah.
The speakership is not an election in the traditional sense. So I think
I also think we're pointing out here from a 501c3 status, there's virtually no chance that any Democrat will become the speaker. So we're talking about an internecine Republican battle here.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's fair to say we can say in a 501c3 compliant way, Nancy Pelosi would be worse for abortion policy than Kevin McCarthy would be.
I think that
I don't
would be
think
fair to
anyone
say.
would say that. Oh no, deny that. Anyway, so who would be best for abortion policy in the role of Speaker of the House? McCarthy, I think, objectively speaking, was a very good pick from the perspective of abortion policy for a couple of reasons. One reason is how he has done, I think, a very good job when it comes to military funding. McCarthy and Republicans in the House passed a military appropriations bill where they were basically backing up Tommy Tuberville in the Senate.
Right.
So Senator Tommy Tuberville has been basically saying, I am going to object and not allow for unanimous votes to allow for military promotions until the military stops its, what he believes, rightly, I think fairly to believe, illegal policy of the military has promoted this policy of paying for soldiers who live in states that limit abortion to get flights out of those states into states that perform abortions. And Tommy Tuberville has said, listen, I'm not okay. Usually the Senate has to vote on promotions of officers in the United States military. And most of the time, this has been done with a voice vote.
Because usually it's non-controversial.
Yeah, Lieutenant Joseph Girardi is gonna get promoted to be whatever lieutenant commander, right? Whatever the next promotion rung of the ladder is for my little brother if he should get promoted. That doesn't require a Senate hearing to discuss whether someone being promoted from a lieutenant to whatever the next rung up is. That doesn't require an in-depth Senate hearing. It was usually a voice vote. Hey, here's a big laundry list of people getting promoted in the military. All in favor, say aye. Aye. And that's it. Well, Tommy Tuberville has said, no, I'm not doing that for these senior level officers. I'm going to withhold my voice vote and make you have floor debate, discussion, and a vote, which really all it's doing is delaying that process. That's all it's doing is delaying it. And he's saying, look, I'm going to be a stick in the mud until the military stops doing this illegal policy. Kevin McCarthy completely backed that by passing a military funding bill that said we are cutting off funding for this initiative that the military is doing. We're not going to pay for soldiers to fly out of state to go get abortions if they happen to be stationed in Georgia, let's say, or Texas, let's say. No, we're not going to pay for them to get out-of-state medical. Well, I dispute that abortion is a medical treatment, but let's say for the sake of argument here, an elective
medical procedure,
an elective medical procedure. Because if it is a medically necessary abortion, there is nowhere in the country where they can't get that. Okay. And I wrote an op-ed on this issue defending Kevin McCarthy in the pages of the Fresno Bee, where I was saying, look, McCarthy is the one being completely reasonable here. I mean, the Fresno Bee, there's no one who's going to be sadder about Kevin McCarthy not being speaker than the Fresno Bee. Because basically the Fresno Bee was running an editorial talking about how terrible Kevin McCarthy was like every single week.
They lost the golden goose.
I know. So, and basically it was like they could just opine on national issues and pretend it was a local issue because Kevin McCarthy's the Speaker of the House. So I was defending Kevin McCarthy and I was saying, hey, he was perfectly reasonable to want to cut off the funding for this. This was an outrageous thing that the military was doing. So McCarthy was really good from that perspective. The other perspective McCarthy was really good from was he brought attention to California-specific issues, particularly from the fact that he was like one of the few guys in Congress who was really promoting the Conscience Protection Act. So our big problem here in California is the California Department of Managed Health Care issued a regulation back in 2014 saying every employer's health insurance plan has to cover abortion as part of the premium. And this was a violation of federal law. This piece of federal law called the Weldon Amendment, which basically said states cannot discriminate against health insurance plans on the basis of failure to provide abortion coverage, and California was banning them from existing. So McCarthy was promoting the Conscience Protection Act, which basically would have stopped California from continuing to mandate this policy illegally. And it would have given teeth to the Weldon Amendment, because the Weldon Amendment didn't really have a very good enforcement mechanism. So I appreciated McCarthy being the speaker, because I thought, well, if McCarthy's the speaker and actually prioritizes this, it didn't get done under Paul Ryan, frankly. And I don't know, maybe if McCarthy was speaker, it would have. I don't know. Maybe McCarthy could shine more light on these California-specific abortion issues and actually get this stuff done. So there's a part of me that is sort of a little miffed at McCarthy leaving from a pro-life perspective, like only because I think he had more of a California focus on these abortion issues, and I think that would have been important for us in California.
Especially given the fact that I was listening to someone, I can't remember who it was on Twitter. I think it was my friend Dan Darling, who is on staff at one of the Baptist seminaries in Texas. Mm-hmm. And he said, my basic philosophy is the same for quarterbacks, head coaches, and speakers of the House.
Okay.
Don't fire the one you have until you're sure you have someone better to replace them with.
Yeah, exactly. And it's clear the Republicans did not really have anyone in mind better, because here they are, they're still voting and voting and voting, and they can't really decide on it. Now, if Jim Jordan is Speaker of the House, and by the time of this recording, maybe he will be, I don't know. If Jim Jordan is Speaker of the House, he is very pro-life.
Sure.
Would not be the worst person in the world. Would it be better? Would it be worse? I don't know. I do, though, think this question is one that is not really being asked. And it's a big question for the Republican Party. It's a big question that Donald Trump has very publicly mused about. And it's a point of difference between Donald Trump says one thing, Lindsey Graham says another thing, Mitch McConnell says one thing. And it's not like all the Trumpy people are over here and all the non-Trumpy people are over there. You've got Mitch McConnell and Donald Trump singing from the same hymn book that, no, we shouldn't promote any kind of federal abortion restrictions. And you've got Mitch McConnell out here saying, I think we should just leave it to the states. We should just leave it to the states. Just leave it to the states. Meanwhile, Donald Trump is out here blasting Florida even, a state abortion restriction in Florida. Florida, under Governor DeSantis, passed a 6-week abortion ban, a heartbeat bill. And Donald Trump was blasting DeSantis for having passed that.
Right.
And saying that it was heartless and that it didn't have enough exceptions. Well, it did have, I think it did have a lot of exceptions for rape, incest, whatever. But now, I don't know with Donald Trump blasting that, if that was just, if DeSantis said that the sky was blue, would Donald Trump criticize him for not recognizing that the sky's actually green?
Unfortunately, probably yes.
Yeah, or I don't. So I don't know exactly what was going on there. But frankly, it raises this big issue. What is the Republican Party position on limiting abortion at the federal level? Do we want to push for, if Republicans get a hold of the presidency, hold of the House, hold of the Senate, which is a very possible outcome after the 2024 elections. I don't know that it's the most likely outcome, but it's certainly in the realm of the possible. Republicans have a very favorable map in the Senate. What are Republicans going to do or attempt to do to limit abortion at the federal level? Senator Graham, Lindsey Graham from South Carolina, along with Senator Tim Scott from South Carolina, and I completely agree with both of them on this, have proposed the idea of a nationwide 15-week abortion ban. That is something that large majorities of Americans support, and I think it could be a really good idea.
It would likely save. How do I put this, John? Because I do think that there's a case to be made that it would not save that many babies, and that it could potentially make it more difficult to pass a stricter, more life-saving ban in the future. There's at least a theoretical case to be made for that. Mm-hmm. But I also think that it is likely that it would save a non-zero number of babies. There are likely babies that would be alive with a 15-week abortion ban, like in California, for example.
There are tens of thousands of abortions that take place at that time.
And so the hard part is, I am sympathetic to the arguments of some pro-life groups that would say, well, we should not compromise and do a 15-week one.
But I think it's also a question of, are national Republicans going to push for anything at the national level or nothing? And frankly, I don't think that discussion's entering into the speaker debates. We're going to talk about the debate next. This is Right to Life Radio on Power Talk. Back with Right to Life Radio. Jonathan and I are discussing, in light of the debate over the speaker, one of the things I've noticed not being discussed, as the Republicans have been wrestling over who's going to be their speaker, what the speaker needs to do. No one has been really mentioning, like, hey, what do these people think about nationwide abortion legislation? What should be the Republican Party's, and more broadly, what should the Republican Party do as far as promoting limits on abortion at the national level? I have a real fear, Jonathan, that Jonathan Keller from California Family Council.
That's me.
That's you. I have a real fear that we're not actually going to resolve this question. I have a real fear that it's going to be a big confused muddle, and that Republicans are going to be huge cowards and are going to basically all develop all of a sudden this incredibly rigorous and doctrinaire federalism and decide that, oh, no. We members of Congress don't have any role when it comes to abortion policy. That is purely and strictly a matter for states. That the states need to do that. And I'm afraid that Donald Trump, we're not endorsing or opposing Donald Trump, but Donald Trump is very poll conscious.
Yep.
And one thing is definitely true is that these statewide ballot initiatives on the abortion issue, the ones in favor of defending life, are not doing well. And the ones in favor of expanding legal abortion and promoting a generalized right to abortion are doing, unfortunately, quite well. And I'm afraid if issue 1 goes the wrong way in Ohio, especially Ohio, which has become a fairly red state, if that goes the wrong way this November, I think you are going to see
like
Republicans,
rats from a sinking ship. I hate to say it.
Yeah, and I feel like Governor DeSantis is saying all the right things. I feel like Tim Scott is saying all the right things. I actually like Tim Scott's sort of formulation of his beliefs on this the best. I think Tim Scott said, I will push for, if I'm elected president, I will push for a 15-week abortion ban, and I will sign anything more strict than that lands on my desk. I think that should be the Republican
bare minimum
platform position of the Republican Party. But I don't know that I very much don't think Ron DeSantis or Tim Scott is going to be the nominee. I think it's probably going to be Donald Trump. And if it is Donald Trump, I don't actually know what the Republican Party national position is going to be on abortion. If he's going to criticize Ron DeSantis for passing a 6-week abortion ban in Florida, for passing a statewide abortion limit, mind you, I don't know what we're actually going to have. I don't know what the Republicans are going to have.
Correct.
And
what the pro-life movement will be able to secure.
Yeah. So
I hate to say that as well. I think that you're right.
Yeah. Well, to end on that bummer note, that'll do it for Right to Life Radio. We will see you all next time right here on Power Talk.